I wanted to share a little inspirational story for me. Some of you may know that Fritz Kreisler is one of my all-time favorite violinists. I once heard that he took 2 years off in his career. There were those that said, wow, that's incredible because the world almost lost one of its greatest artists. And then the more wise said that, in fact, no, it was during those 2 years that one of the greatest artists were born. If we can play the 24 Caprices, we can virtually access anything we want in artistic expression because all the mechanics and facilities will be there. So, without further ado, here's a little bit of insight behind this incredibly meticulous and challenging third caprice. This is an exercise in the most extreme version of precision, articulation, strength, coordination, and left and right hand independence. Most of the time, when we have notes that are flying by more than 10 in a second, we use spiccato. And spiccato actually creates a natural articulation because we have a beginning, a middle, and an end to every single note. Then it's about synchronizing the string crossings and up and down bow strokes. However, when that is taken away, like in this third caprice, every part of articulation needs to come from the left hand. So if we think about our bow, this is the longest elongated legato passage with 10 notes per second flying by. So we need to articulate in every possible way with our left hand. Let's start with that. Let's start with articulation. This may seem simple enough, but there are different forms of articulation in every single approach to every single note. So here, this note begins with a bow stroke articulation. The next note begins with a finger drop. The third note here is actually a string crossing. Same with the next note. And then afterwards, a finger drop and a finger lift. So we have covered bow, start, drop, lift, string crossings. Those are 4 different kinds of articulation. The other one is shift. So we've got 5 different kinds of articulation. Drops, we've got string crossing, then we have lift, and we have shift. The goal is to somehow create, with these 5 different sorts of articulation, the same sound, clarity, and precision in every single note. This drop, it may seem simple enough, it's just a finger drop. However, if the finger drops and is not ready already to lift for the next note, meaning if it's not releasing the pressure from the string immediately after it's dropped onto the string, then it is not going to allow the hand to move very quickly to the next note. So what we need to practice is not just the drop, but also the release that happens afterwards. So when I started retraining on this caprice, I needed to first exaggerate the intonation, because when things fly by quickly, all of our movements tend to contract. And we need to really exaggerate in order for the hand to have that capacity to move that quickly into the next extended hand position. And not only that, but the speed at which I was dropping the finger was closer at this large movement. That's a more similar speed that that finger needs to be moving than, rather than if I was moving. These are melodic, smooth movements, and they will not help train our fingers to move. So the strength and lift of every single finger needs to be really extreme. So you'll notice that after each note, it looks as if my hand is almost vibrating. And it's not because I'm using vibrato, it's actually because my hand is simply just primed and ready, kind of like ready to pounce onto the next note. And here is actually a shift where we don't want, because that's just going to, it's just going to get really, really, really sticky, and that will create some stickiness in the line and not the clarity and fluidity and lightness that we're really aiming at. So the training that is involved in the left hand here is extreme articulation, extremely fast, precise movements, and the strength that is behind each of these movements. It is the final step, final stop on this train of extreme articulation, because as I mentioned in the beginning, if we have spiccato, like in the fifth Caprice, we don't have to articulate as much. We are not needed to articulate as much on the left hand, because our right hand bow is doing the articulation. It is starting, sustaining, and lifting the note after. Whereas in the third Caprice, it is only left hand and our bow on the string. So we need every single movement to be responsible for articulation. When the left hand is busy focusing on every form of articulation, we need to prepare that right hand to anticipate and already be on the tip of hitting that next string when the left hand is ready to release. And we're really talking about milliseconds here. So, and then we need to know exactly how many notes are on each string so that the bow is prepared for the next string crossing. Do you see how many string crossings we've already had? And we really don't have time to think about it. So this has got to be anticipated in advance, prepared, and absolutely intuitive for the right hand, not to disturb what the left hand needs to be focused on doing. Now, as much as you may be tempted, please try to resist from popping out the wrist. I've seen a lot of people, especially with short pinkies like myself, I've seen a lot of people use their wrist to put down the pinky. But as you know, these larger muscles, we cannot move them as fast as our little fingertips. So we've got to train this movement of the pinky absolutely independently. We cannot rely on our wrist to help put down that pinky. Now we can adjust the angle at which our hand is, because that we will need to adjust for different strings. So this is all fine, but we've got to keep this nice and flat. We cannot rely on any other movement, larger muscle group, in order to help get that pinky down. One other thing that I practice ritualistically with this caprice is staggered rhythms. We have to ensure that the string crossing is not getting in the way of creating that same exact amount of time between the two notes. Yeah. We cannot have... If it's already hiccuping at a slower tempo than when we try to play it at tempo, not possible that it's going to be nice and equal. Dotted, and then the opposite. Now, usually I do both all the way through, at slower tempo, and then medium tempo, and then a fast tempo. And I practice the one that feels the most awkward more so than the one that feels comfortable. If there's any weakness within any of the two note connections in this caprice, it will come out within these staggered and dotted rhythms. Excellent for differentiating what the left hand and the right hand is doing. So in fact, we are training left hand and right hand independence. So our brain is split between what it is commanding the left hand to do and what it is commanding the right hand to do. There is one passage that I must share, because as I was learning this, I sort of, my eyes popped out when I saw this on the music. This is an octave held between the second and fourth finger. In this passage, this first finger goes all the way down to first position while the fourth finger cannot move because it's still playing the note on top. So that is a 13th, and then you see that my finger is completely stretched backwards here at a nearly straight manner. This said, even though I can make this stretch, I have to actually release and let the two hands go a little bit like this in order to achieve these two notes at the tempo at which it's flying by. Can you see that little micro shift? Now we're going to move on to the fingered octaves. These fingered octaves are tricky because of two things. First, it's simply the left hand stretch that is extraordinary, and the strength that we need for clarity on fingered octave trills is enormous. And the second thing that is extremely challenging about these fingered octaves is the fact that the sound production is not easy, because the G string, it's a wide low string that vibrates and responds at a slower rate than the D string. When I restarted playing this caprice, I stretched this back and forth for about 2-3 weeks at this tempo, and you'll notice that I draw my forefinger way, 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 way back, even with my first and third finger down. Now you'll notice that the position of my first finger is not comfortable at all, but that's the way it's got to be in order to reach that trill. So. And only after about 2-3 weeks was I able to increase the speed because I had the strength and flexibility within the hands to do so. And now today I can play. And that is about as fast as the trill can be in order for that G string to respond. So with that kind of daily training, I think we'll all be ready for the next 20-30 years of performing 100 concerts. Yes?